Oh, Bill, sorry about I don't know what you're talking about. Coinpicker.us. Okay, yeah, that's probably the last time I'm going to be posting that here because I really don't want to recruit from the chat room. I just, I let you know I sometimes talk about it, but that's as far as I really want to go. I don't want to rain on the crypto shark parade, so to speak. But anyway, that's a huge deal. Factum, Dev at Alibaba, very significant, because Alibaba, you combine VeChain and Alibaba, you have you have billions of dollars of work to do there. Billions, because Alibaba is the tie-in for a huge percentage of China's manufacturing infrastructure. Bitsy doesn't matter. Deloitte and senior manager PwC. So I think, Grant, to answer your question, this is probably a significant aspect of their value, especially the Louis Vuitton, because that means if you can get Louis Vuitton, you can get just about anybody else in terms of their business, luxury goods. Very significant, very, very significant. So by the numbers, circulating supply about 466 million, total supply, a little shy of a billion, 436 down from 911. Actually, not a really, really bad hit in the scheme of things. Not a terrible, terrible hit. Transaction speed, we really don't know because what they originally did, they're basing everything off of Ethereum, which is understandable, and they're apparently adding some technology to Ethereum. That could open up a can of worms, and the reason I say that is because Ethereum is proven at this point. It has limits, it has issues. However, it's proven. When you start doctoring the core of Ethereum, you're developing something completely new and at this point relatively untested. But that's what they have to do. They can't use Ethereum. If they did use strictly Ethereum, if they said we're running on the Ethereum blockchain, period, end of discussion, I would say you're not going to do very well as a project. You may get a little bit of momentum, but ultimately you run into technical hurdles. So the transaction speeds, we don't know it, but they're saying that the first thing they're tackling is it's got to be high speed and it has to be high volume, which they would need because they're talking about tagging each and every product and food products from the farm onward. And the number of products reaches billions. Especially in China, billions. Consumer goods, billions and billions. So either the central chain has a volume throughput that we've never seen before, for the most part, other than maybe a hash graph, and Ryblox claims it, but we don't know. Our chain claims it, we don't know. Ethereum is not even in the realm of possibility. But we would need throughput probably in the hundreds of thousands of transactions per second, which is just not available at this point. Graphene for BitShares claims, I think, 100,000 plus transactions per second. So it may be in the realm, and there's some other ones that would be in the ballpark. But basically, at this point, it's vaporware, but it's not. It's getting very close. I do not think. I wouldn't call them a Cardano vaporware, which I'm sure Cardano is going to happen. I don't have any doubt about it, but at this point, it's vaporware. One of the things you'll get to later in the presentation is that VeChain is actually producing. They've got a DApp coming out, so I'm compliment on that. So they're using a silo chain methodology, which is good. It has to happen that way. That's what Ardor is attempting to get to work. It's not working very well yet. Walton is also going that route, and Walton is doing a similar thing. Walton is taking Ethereum, mixing it with some aspects of Dash, which would be the masternode concept, which does speed up things dramatically. So side chains, masternode concept, all those, that's a different topology. But let me make that an increase versus a crease. And so they're looking to what are we looking at here? Who just posted that? The pre-sale, it's oil backed. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about. I'll tell you that. Who was that? Who just posted that? Bill. I don't want to talk about that right now, but I do. I'm glad you brought it up because I want to get through this. But that brings up something that I think is a definite future, and that's just around the corner because of what happened today. just around the corner, and that brings to it. But anyway, possibly speed increase in volume. Yeah, not new topology. The fees are unverified, but they're going to have to be really cheap. But depending on how much hardware they enter, put into the system, those fees could be how they gain profit. So people pay on a usage case basis for the VeChain platform application. I think that's a good business model. It's a great business model. I would like to see more blockchains go to that route. So anyway, how does it work? Well, they're treating it as a service platform for enterprises. So this isn't like the normal blockchain where I can set up a Litecoin miner or Ethereum miner. They're not going to do that. I think that's going to be a centralized application on the cloud. They'll allow companies or license to companies, perhaps, and I don't know how their profit method looks, but let's just assume they're going to license the system to a company for a particular application, and that company will access the VeChain site or the cloud. That's how it's going to work. So there'll be a cloud. Unlike Ethereum, it works a little differently. I suppose you could call it a cloud, but it's more of a signal network than it is a cloud website, put it that way. VeChain is going to basically be a cloud application where you set up your blockchain or you use a template that they already have. You link your RFID chips, which I'm talking about right here, RFID, near field communications, or scanning, or some other method you may come up with. So you link a product onto the blockchain identifier, and that could be the transaction ID, or it could be, they could have it as a wallet or a token or any number of things, but it will probably be a token, and it'll be linked as a token and tracked everywhere in the process. And if somebody claims to be selling a Louis Vuitton bag, and yet they look on the VeChain blockchain and it said, wait a minute, that's a fake RFID tag. We don't have that in our system. It doesn't exist. Guess what? You don't have a real Louis Vuitton bag. I mean, that is an enormous value. That's exactly how it would work. The same way you can look up a transaction ID on Ethereum or anything else, that's what you could do, and you could determine whether or not, A, if it doesn't have an RFID, you don't have one. B, if it has an RFID or near field communications, and you check it on the you check the identifier on the blockchain, and it doesn't ring true, doesn't validate, you don't have a real Louis Vuitton bag. I think that has significant value, tremendous value. Walton can do the same thing, but Walton's not aiming this direction. So that's anti-counterfeiting, supply chain management, which you could almost call the same thing, and then asset management. Now, this I didn't think was that important until I saw an announcement that VeChain made today, and I realized, wow, those guys are really serious about it. Asset management could include a bridge, a train station, forklifts, public infrastructure of any way, shape, or form, pumping stations, power stations. Now, I don't know precisely what they're attempting to do with it. Power stations generally don't get up and run away, and they're not all that easy to put into a pickup truck. Maybe street lights, yeah, but I'm not familiar enough with the application, and it's literally just launching to understand exactly what they may just say. They may just be doing something as what I would consider to be relatively trivial, but important. It's not a mega leap. Just doing an accounting tracking, meaning it identifies where it is, it identifies when the tracking occurred, and it would just be an RFID sweep. Boom, it goes into the blockchain. But I don't consider that a massive value, but it could be. And of course, it could eventually be automated. A drone could sweep by close enough, pick up the RFID, say, yes, this is here. But I'm unclear on it. I want to understand the value more clearly. But it's cloud-based. It's not going to be publicly distributed, which is why I don't think we see the source code. So it does apparently have use cases in luxury goods. I think it's fairly safe to say Louis Vuitton, near-field communication. You have it on your cell phone, Robert, if you have a modern cell phone. It basically means you can swipe your phone by and pay, Samsung Pay or Google Pay. It just has to be within a very narrow region of the monitor of the near field communication, and you can go cell phone to cell phone with it. You can think of it as like a much more limited Bluetooth. It's pretty close, but it's also fairly secure. Bluetooth has got limited security. But I mean, near field communication was going to be the absolute biggest, greatest thing ever, kind of like what you hear about IoT now. And yet it didn't really rocket as much as people thought it would. It's still there. Like all my cell phones have it. All 3 of my cell phones have it. But anyway, luxury goods, I think you could say VeChain, they're probably going to own that pretty quickly because of the connection with Louis Vuitton. That's my guess. Meaning they go to Louis Vuitton, it works fine. He would understand it very well. Then they could go to virtually anybody else, Dolce & Gabbana. They could go to Rolex watches. They could go to anybody at that point. And of course, Louis Vuitton is one of the biggest marks there is for all luxury goods. So that's really big. As far as the auto goes, price, PwC can get them in the door there. Agriculture, again, I'm unclear. I think what they will be doing is livestock tracking and perhaps shipments of agricultural goods. That's already done. They don't have it tied in, Simon, but if you recall, the CEO is the former head of IT or CIO of Louis Vuitton in China. So I would call that a fairly strong tie. Now, unless he left in a horrible mix-up and they hate him, which I suspect is not the case. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been supported by PwC for the incubator. I think that tie is strong enough that I wouldn't be surprised if they're not already working together. I would guess that they are, because Louis Vuitton, this is a problem worth hundreds of millions to billions of dollars for them. Hundreds of millions. So I'm sure they're working on it their own method, but this could be a better way to go. And audit functions. I think audit functions ties in with the asset management and supply chain management. Everything would be automated, and you would know where everything is. But that gives you a pretty sound idea of what it does. What makes it special? Well, some of the things we've already talked to a little bit. The focus on anti-counterfeit. Now, there are a couple of other programs out there. I think Wabi is one, and Walton could be used that way. But there really aren't a lot. So they're in a narrow space, which is great. I like that. That adds a lot of value to me. Supply chain management also. There are only a few doing supply chain management. Now, all the other ones could do it. But what they don't have, and what VeChain is focused on, and they made a move recently that I'm very supportive of, where they hired a hardware specialist to help them create the links from the virtual world and the database world of blockchain into the real world of products, requiring RFID, particular versions of RFID for different chips, how to install the RFID, how to read the RFID, which is Walton's territory. So I don't know that Walton and VeChain would partner. They may consider themselves serious enemies, but I get the impression that Walton has already conquered this hill